So, this intro, it's already scuffed, but anyway, the song you're hearing is Entertainment Lies by Elderson. My god, Elderson is just amazing for music and just messages as well. And this is one of those songs too. It's just incredible. And I could already tell without having to look at the meaning of it that this is most likely about the exploitation and sexualization in Hollywood and what goes on behind the scenes, essentially. And yeah, it just demonstrates how the world is really fucked up. And it does exploit people, hence the lyrics, like parents' heart attack rather, and family's worst nightmare. So, no, family heart attack, yeah. And like coerced into violation, literally, directors do it all the fucking time. I'm so bored of it, to be honest. Like, hopefully Stranger Things Season 5 doesn't have that, because that'd be weird for starters, and two, don't really fucking want it. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, the less sex there is in movies, the better. That tends to be the rule of thumb for, it's not just movies, it's TV, but it's a rule of thumb for most things. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's, well, like it doesn't make it adult, that's the thing. I don't know why not many people have talked about that, but it just doesn't mean that it's an adult thing. I think what's adult is probably reaching the more like political stuff and even just like general societal views and going into things like war. Like, that's definitely adult themed. But this crap, I know. And yeah, it's a shame that it's often the women who are exploited in these industries. Anyway, the song does a great job of relaying that message, essentially, saying that it's all fucked. And it's in the culture, as it says in the lyrics. So many dreams gone, literally. And we must expose the secret molestation. Exactly. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to something else. This life hack, it's a very strange one, to be honest. I really wasn't planning on making this. I was thinking about it. I was thinking maybe don't add this, but actually it does kind of work, and I do use it in a daily life anyway. Well, I can. But when you move into a room through a doorway, I don't know if it needs to be a hinged door or what, because I've only ever had hinged doors. But when you're moving in there, enter it sideways. It sounds stupid, but if you do that, not only are you going to get in there easier, you're also going to get in there quicker, most likely, and without injury. It's one of the things I remember from walking into doorways is you can literally walk into them. You can walk into the frame, you can hit yourself, you can essentially just get blasted. Like, it's crazy. And also you risk like knocking things over, often injuring yourself. It's quite risky at times, but doing it sideways you pretty much mitigate all of that. And you do allow room for like less turning, and you can even get the door closed as well. Like, when you're going in full body, you have to be fully in, but when you're going in sideways, you can literally close the door, like as you're sideways, and that's like almost a game changer. It's actually crazy how I only really noticed this when I moved house, like last year, maybe the year before actually. But man, it's been such a useful trick. It's just helped. Yeah, so that's the life hack. Let's move on to the first topic. I figured I need to remake this because it's important, but I originally did the last one because of the topic that I brought up. Just wasn't very satisfied with how I was like, I don't know, like stammering, is that the word? Just like going on and on about it, and yeah, I just wasn't reaching the conclusion I wanted to. And this is basically something that came up because of a controversy that happened within my own space of people I know. And it's a very strange one because it involves, like, not necessarily dead naming, but misnaming someone. And it got me thinking about how I'll tackle a situation like that, where this person is quite old and not necessarily like senile. That's the thing, they're like 50 or something, late 50s maybe. And they just don't seem like a nice person based on what I heard. It could be different, you never know, but if I ever talk, that is. But for me, it's interesting because these people seem to have some weird perspectives in terms of life, and this comes from their own lived experiences. And ironically, a lot of these types of people are some of the people I've encountered, for example. And they cause problems for everyone, not just, well, the things that we're talking about, but everyone in the world, even their own fucking people, which is absolutely insane to me. So, I'm really talking about this matter of experience versus perspective, which is really important. I think with experience versus perspective, experience is like a combination of pretty much everything life has to offer. It's like what you've been through, so upbringing, education, certainly politics, and even just situations at the time. And I think that's really important to acknowledge with this sort of topic. And this is like a stark contrast to something like perspective, that's it. I forgot the word for some reason. But it's a stark contrast to perspective. And I think that's really an important thing to highlight here, because perspective is how we as a younger generation have essentially been brought up in a way. And it's how we decide a lot of our opinions. Even if you don't realise it, it is how it works. It's perspective that lead us down these various political paths where we try to favour the thing that's most correct and most truthful for that matter. And that's why it's so important to argue from that rather than experience. Because you do meet people with certainly a lot more world experience than others, but some do change their perspective, but others don't. And those who don't are very stuck in their ways, very stubborn. And I think calling that out is important too, because you need to be able to change your perspective just on the fly. One of the topics I did bring up in the one I was talking about was, for example, the age of consent, where maybe like 40 or 50 years ago it's more acceptable to have teenagers as partners, which is really fucking creepy to think about. It just really fucked up. And it also, this topic came about because of another sort of controversy I heard, where there's like a Christmas quiz, and for some reason someone decided to include a question about a seriously underage pregnancy, like a 5-year-old. And this was on the recent Triforce podcast, I think. Oh wait, it's a Jingle Jam one, so no, it's actually towards the middle of December, that one. Pyrian was talking about this. It was like in a quiz. And they were talking about how this 5-year-old was supposedly impregnated and forced to give birth because people decided that was okay. But it's actually insane. And it's just inherently cruel and evil. But then you have to wonder, as Pyrian brought it up anyway, why the fuck is this so accepted? Why is this even a question in this quiz? It is just so fucked up in many ways, and this is why I bring up perspective versus experience. Because some people will look at that and think, oh, okay, it's cool. Like, they literally don't bat an eye to the fact that a child was potentially raped or used for an experiment, and potentially even died from it. And apparently, this child had a child later on, at the age of 39. Which is just, like, what the fuck is going on with this world? Like, why are we following this person anyway? Like, I get that there's trauma there. That's important to put a spotlight on. Possibly trauma anyway, I don't know for certain. But man, it sucks when that sort of thing happens. And oftentimes it's because people just accept it for what it is. And it's just scummy. Like, Jesus Christ. It is insane to me. Just making my next podcast thing there for some reason. Yeah. But when arguing with those types of people, like, sort of bring up another topic, even like something like recently that I was just reminded of, South by with like Nambler. You need to hear out people's perspectives and experiences. I think that's really important to gaining an understanding of where this has come from and how to debunk it. It's like when I see people debating sensitive topics like Israel versus Palestine, it's like, oh, well, why are you pro-Israel when it's so obvious that Israel is just evil and cruel? And a lot of the times it comes down to people just being suckers for the media or just being scaremongered, which also is like a dangerous perspective, obviously. Hence, that's really. But Jesus Christ, man. It's not even a hard debate to have, but I think people are often ignorant or in the dark about things, and sometimes just on purpose as well. And that's where I think it does become a huge issue. It's when it's done on purpose. And people start to literally, where was I? Got distracted. ADHD. Thank you. Yeah, just trying to purposely like ignore things, ignore the facts. And I think you also have to call that out, because it is a type of behaviour. This is what I mean when I say I used to be a really effective debate person. Like debater, debatee, whatever you call it. Or a mass debater, as you might say, in some places. In all seriousness, when it came to debates, one of the first things I looked to is trying to address the topic. And if they weren't addressing the topic, I'll call them out on it. You're not able to answer a question, so you're wrong. That's as simple as it is, and if I'm not able to answer a question, I'm wrong. It's a fair game in that way. And that's like the first sort of premise that I approach these things with. And I will also just discuss anyway. But I think if people don't have that, then they're going to consistently fall for this shit and create flaws. Yeah, that's a big issue. Sure. Trying to feel that the other thing was debating, calling out people's behaviour. Yeah, whilst it seems brutal, that's one of the only ways to address it, unfortunately. It seems to be one of the only ways, which sucks. Because I certainly wish there was a world where we could be honest with each other and be truthful. But people just don't favour that because there's either greed or there's corruption. There's so many different things that can go wrong with this. One of the things I was thinking of when I was talking about having a sort of rule in at least debates or courtrooms or something where it's really official government's stuff, where you can overthrow them, is if you have a situation where someone is lying and not answering a question. I think there are scenarios where people can exploit that as well, where if you overthrow them for not answering a question, but overrule them rather, in an unbiased way, then people can also exploit that by making a nonsense question like, why don't, I don't know, dogs lay chicken eggs? Or something stupid like that. And because nobody can actually have an adequate answer for that exactly, depending on how you understand it anyway. I think most of us can anyway, that's the thing. But you can just think of nonsensical questions and answers like that, and it can be impossible to figure out, to answer. And if you have like issues on me with like panic disorder, yeah, it gets worse. But obviously, a dog can't lay a chicken egg because they don't share the genome of chickens, and they're not of the bird species, so of course they can't. But you know, that's the sort of scenario we'd face. That's why that's sort of exploitable in a way. That's why I'm sort of incorrect in a sense. But yeah, my main strategy is calling out bad behaviour anyway. And also when something's bad faith. I think the other thing, again, going back to the topic, you just need to be accepting of the fact that people have a lived experience. Because I think it would just get frustrating if you just completely dismiss it and say that, oh yeah, you know, you've been through like Stonewall and shit, like, who fucking cares? But when Stonewall was actually a massive deal, and probably kind of traumatising for some people as well, because of how much they had to go through. And that's really important. But you still have to try and argue the perspective that you acknowledge that it's still concerning that people have the view that, again, underage attraction is like a normal thing. That's where it's all sort of fucked up. And one of the ways I'd argue that, to sort of sum it up, is to argue from perspective again, the perspective of a child who's gone through that, who found it terrifying, found it completely fucking wrong. So many different things wrong with us. And that's why that should be brought up and should be argued. And in the case of the person I mentioned earlier, who was essentially misnaming someone, I think that should be addressed in the same way, perspective versus experience. And it should be obviously brought up that you can't misname someone just because you disagree with the people who this person was with. Like, it's just insane. And that's a matter of perspective. It's like if you don't grow out your child phase, you're just always going to be susceptible to being wrong. It's being corruptible and greedy, and just not being a nice person. And that should really scare the shit out of people. But hopefully it does. I think that's one of the worst things to be labelled as. So yeah, it's probably not the best response. I could probably think of something better. But it's like also, what if you were misnamed, like in general? If you are alive and you just get misnamed by someone because someone didn't like you. Great. Yeah, I guess they wouldn't appreciate that. So again, it's sort of, you can use pride against them, because that's sort of what it is. It's like being proud to be a complete douchebag, and suddenly the people are a douchebag to you. That's like, oh, yeah, that's fucked. Anyway, I think I better move on to this topic. Hopefully that's informative to people. Where's the fucking stop recording button? I keep missing it. Well, this is a weird, sort of interesting topic, I suppose. Depends on who you are, what you are. But you have to be a metalhead. I've been thinking about this because of a short I just saw on YouTube, and it's comparing metalcore from 2004 to metalcore of 2024. Speaking of which, I don't even know what date that actually started, but anyway. I do find it interesting that the thing with like metal is I never used to be into the modern metal. I literally started with bands like Metallica, Black Sabbath, Slayer, Megadeth. Megadeth is probably the better one of, not all of them, but Black Sabbath is definitely good. But Megadeth had the most consistent track record for good music until Super Collider, which I thought was garbage. And yeah, it's surprising how my metal tastes have evolved over the years, and when I reflect on this, it has really evolved. Honestly, in so many surprising ways where I'm actually open to other possibilities and other genres for that matter, to where I'm even making it myself. And that's the crazy thing. I keep saying the crazy thing, what's my catchphrase, I guess. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, this video compared the two, and there is a very sort of stark contrast between the two. I think it's very obvious which one's which, even if you listen to it without the video. But it's kind of surprising that metal has sort of gone away with that, and the only band I've heard that implements both the modern and even older sort of twist on it is probably Bury Tomorrow. Bury Tomorrow is probably the best metalcore band I've ever heard. Certainly up there with Parkway Drive and Killswitch Engage. And we're talking like based on the old stuff. Like new Parkway Drive is really hit or miss for me personally, and to be honest, I just do miss when they were making the sort of more punky / heavier sound with their music. But so far, Bury Tomorrow has literally been one of the best metal bands I've heard, period. It's actually crazy how good they are. I mean, I'm still a Silosis simp, fucking ass, and maybe Dematory simp as well, but I really do like Bury Tomorrow. I think it is a really great band, and it really does implement both these elements, really, like the modern twist and even the oldie twist. It's got the metalcore components where you have like the old harmonised riffs and stuff, but it does it in a way that is pretty up to date. And on top of that, they also have the genty riffs as well. Yeah, and my taste never evolved to that of it. Well, a few years ago it didn't evolve to that. I was in college, I was listening to all this new metal music, not new, but old metal music that's new to me. I was listening to a radio station called Planet Rock, which was alright, I think. It wasn't an amazing station, but it did at least give you plenty of rock music and metal when you wanted that. Certainly something. I feel the other things were, I guess I was just exploring and watching documentaries as well. I found bands through that and stuff, and even artists. It wasn't until I'd say like 2018 where I started to explore other types of metal because I'd just gone out of a relationship, and one of the bands that my ex listened to, that was 2016 technically, one of the bands or artists I listened to was Dematory and Crow's Claw. Literally how I discovered those two. And I was quite surprised by both because I liked metal, but I liked the way these sounded. It was melodic, it was also heavy in areas as well, but it also just sounded fun. It sounded like anime soundtracks to an extent. And it definitely hooked me. That was my gateway drug into that, really. Into this type of metal. It's like symphonic and just more experimentative metal, and even Toho, because Dematory is a Toho band for anyone, not Toho band, it's a Toho metal cover band. And that's how I discovered that. And it really opened my ears to the reality that there's more than one genre and subgenre of music. The fact I liked Toho meant that I liked this sort of, I don't know what genre it is, technically speaking, like, it's not J-pop, but it's like a very melodic type of music, for lack of a correct term. And the same thing can be said with, obviously, Dematory, but being more symphonic focused and metal. And that helped me transition into other things. I started listening to things like, or bands like Blankfield and even Killswitch Engage. I listened to again. I listened to other music from like Burnout Paradise, like various bands from that. Yeah, I listened to a lot basically. There's even like other niche bands like Between the Buried and Me and Funeral for a Friend, and thanks to Rocksmith 2014 as well, where I also opened my ears to what they were offering and seeing how fun the arrangements were when they were showcasing DLC on there. It definitely expanded my range. I started listening to bands I had never even heard of, like Queensryche, which is actually amazing. I listened to Hail the Sun. I found Hail the Sun through Rocksmith. And it goes to show that when you branch out into these things, it shows you a type of world that you didn't know existed. And on top of that, it's so rewarding as well. Eventually, I started listening to more heavier metal, like death metal, and the other things. Like math metal. Obscura was probably the first one I fell in love with, and then there's like Cannibal Corpse, I think. And there's another one. They had a weird name. Dying Fetus, that was it. There's Dying Fetus and stuff. Whilst I could like the music, it's really an appreciation for how heavy and dark it feels, and fast it can be as well. More so than the composition, but there was also a point there where I just didn't like that type of music in other bands. I can't remember the name. It's like similar to Dying Fetus, but it's like not as good. But there's also like bands like Cattle Decapitation, was it called? And even Earth Crisis, which I tried to listen to and I just couldn't get into. It was weird because I think at the time I was transitioning into veganism, and that's where I discovered those bands specifically. But the thing with them that I just didn't like is that they weren't very melodic or heavy for that matter. So I just sort of fell off of them. It just wasn't a big hit for me, so I just never bothered in the end. Apparently Buried Tomorrow is some vegan bandmates. I'm not sure if that's true though. It'd be great if they actually are. Also between the Buried and me, I think the lead guitarist is vegan, but yeah, anyway, it's another thing. I listen to these bands and then I move on to other things. And years later, suddenly, I can get into music like that. More like Gojira. Like, Gojira is one of the strangest metal bands I've ever heard, and yet it sounds so good. It's one of the most unexpected metal bands, I think, because it's not really the type of thing I listen to, but it sounded heavy enough to me and unique enough that I just liked it. And my tastes over time with metal have literally changed. Like, I've got on my list of bands to listen to, or artists, I've got Mirror on there as well. Mirror is like a really unique sort of foul band. Foul? Tal? I don't know how you say it. But it's that sort of genre, and I am definitely curious about it myself. I want to listen to this type of music to figure out what it's about and find what I enjoy about it as well. But yeah, my tastes literally change over time, and I'd still have a massive appreciation for older music, as you might expect, and older music definitely is superior in a lot of cases. But even newer music is good too. Like even the recent Architects, which sounds almost like a Doom soundtrack, sounded incredible. There's so many other cases of this being true as well. Like Arch Enemy recently made a good album, I think. Was it Arch Enemy? I'm pretty sure it was. But even like some bands just age well by keeping the old sound. Like Judas Priest and Saxon were incredible. It shows that sometimes it's not really about how they write the music, it's just how you sort of grow up listening to it and how you interpret it. When I listen to something like Gojira, which very much is I guess sort of out of date for some people, over date rather. Not out of date, over date, but it's like not part of your time, and you listen to it, it's like wow. And even like Bring Me Horizon, for fuck's sake, like one of the more insane bands. I expect even like Slipknot, which I have listened to as well. But you get this interpretation of them over time, I think, and it does change eventually. And you might think that, like, from years from now, you'll still be a metalhead, but eventually you might get bored of it. You might want something else. You might just accidentally come across a subgenre like I have, and just love it. That's what happens really. That's like the beauty of discovery and mystery. It's kind of crazy to think about, but that is what happens essentially. Um, so yeah, I don't really know what to add. Really, there's nothing wrong with old music, but there's nothing wrong with new music either. And I think that's just maybe a me thing, but I think most people do grow up anyway, having a change of taste in their music. But for Christ's sake, I'm getting into jazz. That's how far I've got into metal at this point. Yeah, I went from like, oh, like how complex and complicated metal arrangements are, and even bands like Polyphia, artists, other, like Animals and Diseases, which is technically both. But even solo artists like Stradavari, I've always had an appreciation for, and then you just move on to something like jazz, and it's like, wow. Jazz is actually pretty incredible. I remember listening to Nucleus / Ian Carr, and it's just an experience hearing that jazz fusion. It's just wow. And I think I could enjoy that again. But also, games help me to discover this type of music. It's really interesting because games have a big role to play in this. It's how I started my music journey. I grew up loving the soundtrack to Sonic Adventure and wanted to learn that on guitar, and eventually I did. And I moved on to more things. It's like expanding my horizons rather than focusing on one specific genre, which I think is almost a death sentence in this day and age. And that's sort of what I'm doing with my original music. I'm not focusing on one specific type of metal. I'm focusing on anything that I can come up with. That's like the entire point of it. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say on this. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with music. I think it's just interpretation more than anything else. Although I will say a lot of modern pop music is crap, and I'm a lover of pop music, which again, probably my other experience in music, I should now think about it. So like, that wasn't even my special interest in terms of music. Like pop was at first, and then it became, say, metal and rock music. And now it's probably going to be something like jazz or game soundtracks and symphonic. Like, it depends really. I do have a sort of want to listen to even something like classical music, because I'm interested in that. But yeah, that's kind of the thing here. Again, interpretation, it changes over time. What you perceive as bad music now can be perceived as good music later, probably. Yeah, it's certainly possible. But anyway, let's move on to this topic before I kill my throat. Oh, South Park, Season 6, Episode 4. I almost lost my place there. This is probably one of the most interesting episodes so far because it's doing an episode about something that, it is sort of similar to what I do, but it's not exactly, obviously. But it's called Fun with Veal, and this is about how animal agriculture mistreats veal, essentially. Surprisingly, it aged well in a lot of areas, but it also shows like the great hypocrisy of people, and it almost feels like it was written by someone. I can't remember who the writers are, my bad. It just feels like written by someone who is at least vegetarian, which is interesting. It definitely feels inspired by that aspect, because obviously with the sort of entire point of that is that they're showing the cruelty of veal. And there was this point in the episode where they negotiated with the FBI to get the name of Veal changed to Little Dead Baby Cows, and they succeed in that. And people, obviously, you don't see it though, that's the only thing. But people are turned off that idea, and they start not to buy that. And it's such a relevant point even today. That is pretty much true. And I think that was certainly one of the most interesting points. But also, it's just aged well in terms of how it portrayed Stan. Because Stan was defending the Veal calves and wanted to save them. And later on, Stan admits that he doesn't want to eat meat because it comes from these poor animals. And yeah, that's certainly one of the coolest Stan moments in that, to be honest, in this episode. In South Park even, so far anyway. It's only season 6. But they try to rescue the Veal, obviously, and try to take them to a better place, and then it turns out, as they're trying to get to Mexico to save them, they get pretty much not ambushed but stung, I guess. As they're going there, they get stopped with these like balloons on the Veal calf truck, what do you fucking call it? Can't remember. Too tired for this shit. And then it's revealed that the rancher does not actually need the Veal anymore, because the name change actually ruined his business for that, and the calves can actually live with the other cows in that area. So it's certainly a goodish ending, but it's just mainly on the point of cruelty, which is the only part which just feels a bit sort of tone deaf. Because you do sort of get the point with that. It is cruel to put animals in bad conditions, obviously. Obviously, with how we know about it in real life, does it reflect it? Honestly, no, because much worse things happened, and the fact they started it with a rancher rather than an actual farm, like the way that it actually fucking works in real life, to me portrays a bit of, I guess, ignorance and a lot of just the way that the meat industry even just gets their way with advertisement. And ironically, this doesn't help it in the slightest, because it's advertised that obviously these animals are happy, but you don't see what goes on behind closed doors. And as we know now, in this day and age, it all comes from exploitation. That's, again, one part where it hasn't aged well. I wouldn't expect many people to understand that. But it does feel a bit more on point than even The Simpsons has done it with Lisa the Vegetarian. Because I know that episode was based around Lisa making a connection with the food on her plate and the animal that she met. And it's a similar sort of thing here with Stan, obviously, where he grew vagina sauce because he didn't eat meat. It's kind of funny, that's the other thing actually. That's a common misconception from the meat industry, usually. People who don't eat meat get ill. Which is weird given that there's vegetarians who've pretty much lived for, what, tens of thousands of years? No, more like hundreds of years, and not had a single issue. It's quite stupid. I'll say this is like a satirical take on it, so yeah, I think overall it's kind of aged well, but other points it's not really. It doesn't really get to the point, and it does leave me a bit worried about future episodes I'm about to see. Because even though it can make a very good point, as I said, it also just kind of ruins it, and also the end with the hypocrisy, like, let's go out for burgers. Yeah, that's about right, I think, for South Park episode. It does sometimes end with like hypocrisy like that. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this episode because it's like the first of its kind with this It's the first time it's actually been sort of acknowledged about, was it meat and the industry itself. And there's not going to be more. I know they did one on pizza, I think, at some point. I can't remember when that was though. Must have been a long time ago. Yeah, and I know they did one on actually vegans themselves at some point. I think it might have been a much later season because I don't remember it as a kid, obviously. But I saw a clip on r/vegan of a depiction of how South Park views vegans, which is really funny. It's like they're wearing life jackets, and I think the only part that wasn't great was the criticism of forcing children to eat vegan food, which is a controversial point for sure, but to be honest, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think people really blow out of proportion, that sort of thing. It should be the kid's choice, but they should understand where it comes from. It's a point of education, really. You need to know where these things come from, like your food, your clothes. Otherwise, you're not making an informed decision, and you're probably causing a lot of harm. That's why people encourage this, even putting it on children, for that matter. That's why that's so important. And I do sort of wish I grew up more knowing that. But I wasn't shown anything like that. And so I made those consistent errors and mistakes in eating animal products. Not knowing, again, it's inherently cruel and inherently exploitative as well. Let's not forget that point, because that's really important. Yeah, I did grow up with some vegetarian food in my life, but there wasn't tons of it. It's like a corn bolognese that was pretty good. Anyway, just want to discuss this, so let's move on. I don't know if I spoke about this, but anyone who watches the Triforce podcast would know that Pyrian... What the fuck's my phone? It's in my pocket. Confused it. Saw it on my table, but anyway. Yeah, Pyrian was talking about a squirrel problem he had at his house years ago, before he had kids apparently. And there are some really concerning things about that, which I think I did discuss actually, about how these sort of behaviours can lead to apathy and just general desensitisation. And it is very much apparent in even just Pyrian's own behaviour and wording with things that he is desensitised. You know, it's not really an ounce of empathy for animals. I don't think that's really the wrong thing to say here, because it literally is apparent from everything we've seen so far, at least relating to Pyrian and animals. So it's going weird with my fucking keyboard. I don't know what's going on with this place this point. Yeah. It's a very strange scenario, to be honest. Because it's just unusual. The fact that someone can just so abruptly condone just killing animals, it's just very bizarre. Ironically, a lot of people who probably take issue with this also eat animals. So it shows that this isn't really because isolated incident's a term, but you know, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, and that's very much apparent. Because I guarantee you, a lot of the people taking issue again are not like vegan or vegetarian or anything. So they wouldn't kill an animal, but they're happy to pay people for it, which is disturbing. As it should be. Because it is fucking disturbing. It's like paying a hitman to take someone out. Literally the same thing. But when it comes to animals, obviously, you have to understand that animals are conscious, and they think and feel much like anyone else does. And also they have these memories, they have families as well of their own. Let's not forget that. There's a lot of things there, And obviously the first problem here that we could see with just killing a squirrel that's on your territory, which by the way isn't your territory technically speaking, and morally speaking even, it's just insane. Like, it's fucking cruel. Not to mention, that squirrel could have probably had a family as well. So when they found out that obviously the squirrel didn't come back home, it's like, oh, well, there's no fucking closure there. It always gets me depressed thinking about that, to be honest, like the way in nature animals can just depart from family, like mother, father, or siblings, and then just die at some point, and nobody will ever know, or they find out that someone's dead. You've seen it before. There's plenty of clips of deers, I think, who've seen their own being shot and killed, and they're confused why obviously their partner, whoever it is not moving, and it gets really fucking depressing because they don't know what's going on, and they realise that they're not moving and not responding. It's like they're now having grief because now this animal that they've obviously grown to love is gone. And this is probably the scenario that many animals face when we look at hunting. And the other problem, I suppose, is like, I don't know the specifics, but I'm pretty sure that there isn't a good reason for just hunting animals in general for a species control. Population control, not species. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not true for most cases. But even then, the issue isn't to do necessarily with hunting, it's to do with preserving the place and doing it in a way that's not violent. That's where that issue becomes like a major problem, obviously. There just isn't a rational reason for hunting animals. And from all my years of trying to come to terms with something like that, like not eating animals and obviously not paying for people to kill them, I've never found a good argument on a moral grounds, not just environmental but moral. I think the only case is when you're being threatened by a predator, which, yeah, it's fine because that's essentially self-defense. And because we value our lives more as humans, but I think we draw a line at when it's someone that we don't need to kill. And that's the difference. Like, hunting a deer is different to hunting a wolf. I don't know why people are hunting wolves. They aren't coyotes, technically speaking. There's no good reason for it. And even with population control as a thing, it's just ridiculous. Again, even just going for the animals that are supposedly predator animals are supposed to go for, I don't think it's still a good thing. So you just still end up with many issues there. One of the biggest dilemmas in at least the vegan community when I was in that was how we need to somehow address the problem where there is a lot of animal suffering in nature, and it's hard to address the ecosystem with that as a factor. So I think it's important that somehow we find a solution to that, to allow animals to live in peace and not just be under threat of anything like human interaction, predator animals, anything like that. I think that's the most optimal route, and the other one that we can't handle is obviously things that slip out our hands, like insects. We can't really control insects as far as I know, unless you gas them all, but that's killing them. But even then, that's a risk to other animals. So, I don't know. It's complicated, obviously, so there's no easy solution. But I think the point I wanted to get to with, again, killing animals, especially ones that are in your territory, is stupid to do. Because you're already in this fucking place, you built on their land, you've essentially invaded it, and you're complaining that they're getting in your place, like, even though you've taken the territory. It's fucking insane. You've taken over their place, where they used to live, supposedly, but also just where they live in general. Like, they've got to move around and find food, somehow. And I'd much rather an animal come to my place to get food than someone else's, because obviously, if there's someone else's, like, peering flags, then I'm going to have a good time. It's just inherently true. I'm not really sure what else to add here. I've pretty much said all the points I can which are related to this. But it is pretty much true that killing an animal for being on your land is just bad. Being in your house, yeah, that's an issue, sure, but killing them, probably not the best solution. If anything, you need to find the alternative. If they're looking for food, it's like rats or squirrels again, and first of all, why do you have rats? I've never fucking had rats in my life. Even with places that have just been dirty with food. But you need to find a way to keep them out, to lure them out. Block up holes, block up anything you can think of, rather than fucking kill them. And people say, like, rats are diseased and shit. They're diseased because they're looking for fucking food. At least from what I know, anyway. They're diseased because they're struggling to survive. And yeah, whilst it is a mercy to put some of them out of their misery, it's not the best thing overall for the population, because they have to survive some way. And I think it is often like a stigmatised thing with rats anyway. Same with birds, like there's a scare with bird flu, and that's suddenly being justified to making justified use rather of killing birds, even though we're in their way and they're also trying to survive like we are. But it's actually fucking insane, and this comes to another point I just remembered. It's greed. One of the problems that humans have is just inherent greed. I don't think animals necessarily have that, because they do immoral things, but they can't control that, really. It's just built into them. And I think that we very much understand that they can feel pain, and that in itself is enough reason to leave them the fuck alone. I've seen crazier things, I think. Like tigers going into, unfortunately, more where places are people are in poverty. And whilst I'd argue that maybe there is justified use of force against animals doing that because of the danger they bring, it's still best to leave them the fuck alone. That's the only option. And that's it, really. And even like if you come across a pack of dogs, like some people out there do not know that packs of dogs can be extremely fucking dangerous. Like, I can't remember as well, there's like some gore videos on that, but yeah, you can literally get chased by a pack of dogs in certain countries and you just wouldn't know it's coming. They're just following you to hunt you down, to try and eat you. So it's all sort of fucked up. Yeah, anyway, I think I better move on for this topic before it's getting tired. I know I've got music to play. So, yeah. Fuck human greed. God, I'm scared to watch Stranger Things Season 5 and Invincible Season... not Invincible. I got those confused. One Punch Man, similar though. One Punch Man Season 3. I think it is. It must be. My god. What is it with shows now just taking this real shit turn where they're just underbaked? The thing I heard about Stranger Things 5 recently, Season 5, is apparently going to turn into another sort of a like spin-off series. Like, there's going to be a bunch of them. They're just going to milk the fuck out the IP. Like, what the fuck? This is just going to turn people off it, and suddenly you're going to see a bunch of Stranger Things Season 5 merch in the fucking charity shops and shit, and being given away, or even just thrown away. Because people just don't want to be associated with that. Like, when something becomes shit, you think you just have a natural affinity to not want to use it. I had issues with even getting my Shadow plushie out, not Sonic one, by the way. It's actually World of Warcraft. Look up Shadow World of Warcraft, and you'll see. But I had a struggle to sort of get rid of that because I didn't want to, and that came about because I really just wanted to have like a collection of plushies that I could enjoy, that I could look at and appreciate, and I have a few of them, like gaming related and TV related, no matter, even just anime. But it's so strange when a show that you've previously loved, like One Punch Man and I forgot the name again, Stranger Things, like when it goes from good to shit, it's quite boring. I know it's a similar thing with like my reaction to Black Mirror, for example. I had a similar sort of thing going on there as well. When I got to the later seasons, it was like, okay, this maybe isn't as good as I thought. It just seemed to have been enshittified in a way. Man, that does get me so worried. I don't understand why this is happening. I'm not sure what's causing people to have such a hindrance, and the weird thing is I've started writing it myself. And it's not fucking hard to even write some things. I didn't necessarily forget a lot of the lore I made, because it's all fresh in my memory. I literally lay out the groundwork. Write down a character sheet on the bottom. It's actually better to do it in another document on the side, but do something like that, and then you write the story itself. Write down all your ideas, and you find places to put them, can arrange it. You don't even need to make massive descriptions, you just need to like make the conclusion and the core parts that you want to include. I'll make an example. So let's take something here. I'm trying to look at my YouTube recommendations. Let's see. Problem is, there's a One Piece recommendation, and I'm tempted to just use that as an example. Like, let's just go off the thing here. Okay, Luffy has a sword. It's the Land of Wano, episode 892 to 906, and Luffy has a sword. So let's make a Luffy story. This is a cool thing. This is the conclusion. Like, Luffy becomes a swordsman. So he's there with Zoro, and the entire training arc is literally, okay, Luffy wants to learn how to use a sword, like Zoro does, and Zoro essentially has to convince him in a way, or get him to start acting like a proper swordsman, have the honour of a swordsman and the etiquette as well, because that's all pretty much involved. There's like an entire training arc. There's obviously some great opportunities for humour, there's even opportunities to surprise Zoro into Luffy showing his moves. Like, you can just do like a Gum like Zoro version just to surprise him, like Gum Onigiri or something like that. Like, that'd be great. But literally, you write an entire training arc, and you can involve more characters as you go along. Certainly room for exploration in that. And even like drinking alcohol. Like something that Luffy doesn't do. He's like, what do you find in this stuff? Anyway, it smells gross. It's like, oh, you'll see. And yeah, it's just a bunch of goofy stuff. And then he goes to meet Zoro, and Zoro's not there. Because of his gimmick with Zoro, where he can't find where he's fucking going. So it's a decent idea, I think. But that's like how I lay it out. Got all the ideas out, got all the characters there, got also the gimmicks included, and there is room for exploring as well. So it's like open-ended. And that's essentially how I lay these things out. It's not difficult to do. It's creativity, and you're doing it in line with the law of the world and the characters for that matter. And you can make something beautiful out of it sometimes. And that's certainly what I'm doing with a series I'm working on at the moment. It's like I'm not sure if I mentioned it, it's like a masculine sort of Sonic series with Cream the Rabbit, who's at the moment not a very explored character, and I wanted to explore their perspective just in the world, but also do it in a way that's sort of adult as well. So it's not like, oh, this is just going to be some childish shit. It's more like, oh, well, this is actually really dark. And a lot of that I also did by sort of laying out the groundwork. I've got still some bullet points here. Like, I've got a whole fucking story on this. It's crazy. Like, even post the parts that I'm going to talk about. Jesus Christ, like some child abuse bits, which is fucking insane. Extreme despair of having to deal with the world's politics. And, you know, this is like a thing that young people have to care about these days as well, so it's quite relevant and relatable. Things like war videos and stuff making people depressed. Her mother is not really a whore, but just someone seeking a source of revenue and urges, really. Yeah, there's like a bunch of things here. Still very, very much a work in progress. But that's the worry with all these shows. It's like, I've already written the ending for this, technically speaking. It's not really an ending, it's like an ending to the first major part of the story. And there's a continuation onto another major part where they're going out into the world, or the universe rather. You know, I don't get how they fuck up these endings, because apparently the ending of Stranger Things was really bad. And then I think about like Game of Thrones, which is probably the first thing I think about with bad endings, and how many issues there was with that. Like, it's just kind of nuts. Yeah, I literally don't know how those even happened, to be honest. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. So yeah, I'm literally afraid to watch these series, and what else have I got written down? I keep forgetting to check my list. Like ongoing ones, I got Beastar Season 3, apparently that came out in December 2024. Huh. Invincible Season 3, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Season 3, which is not yet announced, so I'm not even sure when that's going to be. I do look forward to it though. I love Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, it's hilarious. They cut all of the shit in the manga, which is just creepy pedo stuff, but you know, this anime adaptation is like really good. It's less sexualized and more focused on the comedy and the sort of slice of life aspect. Dead End Paranormal Part Season 3, that's actually never going to happen, unfortunately, so I have to remove that. Fuck, it's a shame that show went away. My Hero Academia Season 8, it's almost definitely going to happen. Stranger Things Season 5, it's already out, so I've already underlined some of this, so yeah. It'd be interesting to watch like One Punch Man Season 3, I'll admit, because I'm crappy at animating. If you're trying with Season 8, Season 9 wasn't fully released, that's weird. Watching the rest of the Pokemon anime at some point, Fallout Series 2 at some point. Wait, was that released? I can't remember. Castlevania Anime Series 5 went out. The Boys Season 5, apparently that did come out. I remember there was like a trailer as well. Spy X Family Season 3 technically, I don't know why I didn't update that. I'm sure when that's out. Taskmaster new series, already up to date. That's ongoing, I don't know why I didn't name it. Made in Abyss Layer 5, I still need to watch at some point. Last of Us Season 2? Wait, And they combined season 1 and season 2 together, didn't they? That's why it's there. And then Wicked for Good, okay. That's like my list of shows / movies to catch up with. It's just the things I enjoyed, really. Like, weirdly enough, everything here I enjoyed at one point or another. And like, how many of them have not aged well? One Punch Man, let's see. My Hero Academia technically aged better as it went along, because I noticed that the latest series was really good. It's actually dark and emotional as well. That's the insane thing about it. It started out as like a goofy watch. I was like, haha, this is fucking shit. Because it was. It was terrible. It's just a high school anime with superpowers, which merely is a cool aspect, but it wasn't executed very well. And as I got into the more serious stuff with like daddy issues and stuff, it was like, whoa, okay. They have fists now, okay. Stranger Things obviously didn't age well. Futurama didn't age well either. That's a weird thing. I remember watching some of the latest episodes, I think a year or two ago, and they just don't work for me. They're not very good. I think the Kif being a father one was really cool. I did like that. It was kind of an interesting episode. But yeah, it didn't age too well. That's the next one. Also, why is my leg cold? I don't know why I can't feel that. Pokemon anime, not sure. I don't think it transitioned well. But it has a lot of opportunities for goodness for that series too, not sure. Castlevania, what is that? Yeah, not many things here that can age poorly because it's quite new. Yeah. Help me. Save me from this. Oh, and then I've got a ton of fucking TV shows to watch, Jesus Christ. Yes, that's crazy. Anyway, I better move on. So I just got done with South Park season 5 and 6. And I gotta be honest, it isn't as good as the first 4 seasons. I think it has some issues here and there that could be ironed out, but I don't know if they are possible. It's weird to me, but it felt very sort of out of touch in areas and just not very fun. I actually had the first bad episode here, which is the people with the condition that makes their face look like an arse. But there are some very good episodes as well, actually. There's a few good ones. I considered some episodes funny, but not necessarily good. Okay episodes. Yeah. I might leave these notes in like a proper review or something, I'm not sure. But it's certainly interesting. There's some good jokes here and there. I think I've liked these. Quite a few good ones. Yeah, it's like very interesting. It's also the season 5 I think introduced Jimmy, and he hasn't appeared much, which is interesting. I don't know what his deal is exactly, because Jimmy has a permanent place and Jimmy doesn't have one. So I don't know where he even fits in. Like, is he going to school? It wasn't really explained. There's like a bunch of twists in it of like Kenny and stuff. Obviously, people know what happened at the end of season 4, was it? I can't remember, but you know, maybe it's season 5. It's probably season 5 actually. There's quite a few interesting moments as well, a few memorable moments. It actually had one of my favourites actually so far, and I added it to a thing. Is it? That's not Timmy, is it? Where's my favourites playlist on YouTube? Because I found a clip of it. There's also like the beating a dead horse joke, which is really funny. That made me laugh a lot. And just Timmy tried to get Jimmy killed, that was it. I was thinking maybe it wasn't that, but it actually is. Yeah. It's interesting. Overall, it's a season worth watching, but again, there's like some poorly aged episodes, and they seem to ramp up a lot of the usage of words. I did find the episode with tolerance kind of funny. It says that the walk of prejudice, or like where you experience what it's like to be insulted, and they're just saying out fucking words. Like, yeah, I won't list them, but you can imagine what they're gonna say. Now, that's the first N word they actually dropped, believe it or not, in the entire show. Like, it's fucking crazy. They're really not afraid to set that boundary, which is certainly fascinating. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not. It really depends. And of course, Eric likes it. That's the funny thing as well. But God, Eric is a fucking menace in this series. Like, this is the one with that guy that he tried to kill. Like, no, he didn't try to kill. It's like he tried to terrorize. Damn, it's fucking crazy. It's just insane how far the show goes. Like, even going as far as to have, even in like I think it was the previous seasons actually, it's like sexual harassment panda, something like what was it? I can't remember. A lot of fucking paedophilia jokes, which is weird. I'm not sure about those, but given the context of the show, it's not really a big deal. It seems to happen a lot more often for some reason this season than previous ones. But I know from a future episode, actually, there's like this one that's embedded in my memory, unfortunately, from childhood. There's like a little Miss Beauty pageant, and it's just the fucking judges are masturbating onto the desk. It's like, oh God, fucking save us. It's funny but fucking creepy as well. It's like, yeah. But this show exists obviously to be a satire of that situation. That's literally showing what they do. The priest one, actually, I remember that, where they're constantly wanting to get kids on a cruise with them, and obviously to, in their words, have sex with boys. Yeah, Randy's outburst was quite funny. Did find that really interesting. The entire episode was just very entertaining. Obviously, Priest Maxi, who's like the only good priest there, just insane as well. Yeah, just goes on an adventure to debunk this shit. It's actually pretty clever. Not sure what else there is to add to this really. Like, it's just a good few series overall. It's always possible for them to go downhill in just later seasons, like double digits, because to be honest, with so many episodes, it kind of would make sense with what is a sitcom to have just various situations where it does change there, here and there. Yeah, I don't know what else to add really. I did like the series again, can't really fault it, but just be aware. It's where they start to really overstep boundaries. Because I'm not really that like thin-skinned, for lack of a correct term, I just accept it really. It is what it is, unfortunately. Yeah, I can't change it. Can't change the fact they use the word retarded a lot. It's just a product of its time as well. That's the unfortunate thing. It's very pop culture based as well. There's a lot of celebrity and just figures thrown into this. Like, God, the one with the beating horse, beating the dead horse. That was someone, a Fogel, someone I can't remember the name. Someone who ate Subway and lost weight. Then you got the guy who contacts the dead, John Edward, who's a complete narcissist, it seems. A lot of these references I don't get because obviously I was a child when this first came out, and a lot of the news at the time doesn't seem relevant. The only things I remember are like the war in Iraq, which wasn't a big point that I took in, to be honest. I didn't like war as a kid, it scared me. Yeah, I didn't really understand any of the humour anyway when I was a kid. Just more like, oh, I was watching this to see some cool moments or violence, and that was it. And it did deliver sometimes, for sure. I can't really think what my favourite episode of the series is. I don't do this often, but there are sometimes episodes that just go above and beyond. Like, let's see, it's gonna be too much scrolling, unfortunately. Maybe season 6, episode 13, the Lord of the Rings one. That was quite funny. It's very entertaining as well. Yeah, it's just some interesting stuff that I don't know. Just scrolling past, I can't even find it. I swear there was one that was funny. Maybe episode 2. Yeah. Anyway, better move on. So that's my thoughts on those 2 seasons. Well, 2026 has already been a fucking disaster of a start. For some reason. Literally, everything just seems to be going wrong at this point, and this is why people just start to lose the will to live. You know, yesterday I discovered that the fucking toilet cleaner I was using, which is new, it's like so fucking strong. I was getting headaches and asthma. What the fuck is that about? I've never used this stuff before. It's like a limescale cleaner. And because of the crappy door I got on the bathroom, which I can't switch myself because I don't know how to, it's literally leaking out the fucking chemicals, so I don't have any way to actually air it out, so I have to just sit with it. And I tried to remove the limescale cleaner, and it just wouldn't go away. It just stayed smelling. So I don't know what that was about. I like flush the toilet. I obviously closed everything I could. It just did nothing. And then I got some other news from today, which is just, it's tragic, but it's also incredibly stupid as well. Like, it's just 50-50 with this, to be honest. Some people in a, I think a Swedish nightclub, literally burnt alive. I think it's 40 people, 100 injured. So most critical. So I'm in my chair today. Sorry. Most critical reported on this, and there are videos of the fire taking place, which is again just insane. People are there prioritising filming the fire than they than survival instincts, which sort of reminds me of another topic on that, because honestly, the day and age of social media is, for some people, it's more important to get your phone out and start filming than it is to actually do something productive or helpful. It sort of reminds me of the days I watched not suitable for life content, where there's obviously a lot of gore, and oftentimes it was someone recording someone's death on like a phone or a crappy camera, and it's very disturbing just in general that that's a thing. But there's also times where there's someone who's like suicidal, for example, and these are probably some of the worst ones, other than torture videos, but I've seen worse torture in animal agriculture, which again says a lot. But yeah, the people who are like suicidal obviously is a sad story. So there's people really depressed standing at the top of a building or a window, and you know, there's like a crowd of people around them, literally fucking recording it. Like, nobody cares that this person is suicidal, they just care about getting this on fucking video. It's just extremely disturbing, and you do see everything, right? You see like the moment of falling and then the impact, which by the way is not like a splat like the cartoons say, but it's extremely fucking disturbing. Yeah, at most there's blood everywhere, but that's it. You don't see the broken bones, you don't see anything else. Yeah, it fucking sucks. That's the sort of age we're living in. That is a scary thought in itself. I get reporting things like crime, like videoing that, but I don't get video recording to this extent, where like multiple people are doing it instead of it's actually saving their own lives. And even having the decency in the situation of them not suitable for live content to just respect someone even after their passing. It could be someone with a family, it could be someone with children, you never know. And if they find out one day that maybe the police have found it, some people have been recording it, it's going to be like, that's going to be extra fucking devastating. Because there's also going to be that point that maybe they could accidentally come across it. They could see their own, like, what parents, uncle or aunt, like, you don't know at this point. Anyone could see that. That's what makes it all so disturbing. But as if that wasn't dystopian enough, there is another issue. The US has started to fucking bomb Venezuela, literally a few days after New Year's. This is extremely disturbing because the war was completely unprovoked, and there's literally no reason for it to happen. It shows the level of corruption going on in the US, and this is why I advocate for essentially force against governments, or anyone, because it's necessary. This shit shouldn't be allowed to happen. It's just so fucking dangerous. It's like if the US for some reason were to pick a war on, like, the UK, which very well could happen. It's still evil. Like, no matter who it is. The problem is nobody wants to be involved in a war. There's too much money at stake, nobody can fucking afford it. Nobody would even be able to move in that situation either. And it just does nothing for progress. People would be saying, like, oh, progress is bad, it's all broken, it's gonna inspire immigrants to come to the country. Shut the fuck up and smell the coffee. That's all I have to say to that. Because that's not how the world works. That's not even what we're advocating for. To explain this, the thing that people are actually advocating for is equality. And that will be essentially the start for some progress, some good progress in into making the world a better place, to allow people to survive and even just live a basic life. Like, it's so important. I can't stress enough how important that is. On top of that, when people are at each other's throats, how do you expect these people to defend a country? So again, that hypothetical, let's go back to that. If the US was bombing the UK, well, what the fuck would we do? Nothing would be the response. Because everyone who wanted to fight no longer wants to. Because one, they don't want to go to war with the US. Two, it's a lost situation anyway, so essentially it's better to admit defeat. And three, nobody wants to fight for their own fucking people. In fact, they would encourage bombing, because nobody wants to fucking support each other. There's craziness of this shit here. Because there's no support for anyone in their own country. They're not going to stand behind them. Sure, people will defend themselves, if they try to. But I doubt anyone is going to fucking fight for this war. It's like if you're thrown into a, what is it? I can't remember what it's called. It's like not permanent. Like a forced military role, depending on what age you are. A bit like in the World Wars, was it? I think it was both, if I'm not mistaken. It was like such a despairing situation that all young men were forced to go to war anyway. You just have people like either shooting officials or shooting themselves. It's so fucking dangerous as well to have a country that's in such disarray. I'm genuinely surprised that the US hasn't done it themselves. You know, at this point it wouldn't surprise me if we find out tomorrow that that's actually happened. Thank fucking God, to be honest. Like, why are we still killing innocent people? Like, guilty people should be brought to justice. As far as I know, everything to do with Venezuela, there's been not a single guilty person. In fact, it's just a few that seem to be guilty. There's apparently the drug trafficking. But that's it. Like, it's such a minor fucking inconvenience. It's like if someone from, I don't know, trying to think of an example here. Like maybe someone coming from the Netherlands to the UK bringing over drugs. Like, do we suddenly go to war with the Netherlands because they just brought over drugs for some reason? Illegally, admittedly. No. That shouldn't be how it fucking works. And, you know, countries treat your own people a lot worse than how we treat them. I'm sure there's like plenty of criminals of even the UK and the US in other countries because they've literally committed a crime. So that's why it's so dangerous to just pick fights on people and just not prioritise progress or peace. Like, the fact there's no talking between the US and Venezuela really demonstrates that. It's just so corrupt. And if I had to have a theory about this, my guess would be that the US is at least probably, it's like my conspiracy theory, or not really a theory, but conspiracy. Probably trying to get Venezuela so that the Russians can have a fucking base for some reason. Again, it's like territory control and stuff. There's so many fucking dangerous things happening out there. Like, Jesus Christ, I don't understand what the world is coming to at this point. It's run by idiots, it's voted for by idiots. That's the other thing here. What do you fucking expect? Nobody trusts a intelligent or compassionate person, so what do you expect is going to happen? And that's the thing, I see it constantly when I'm watching TikTok and it's all politics, I wish there's other things there. And it's always like people making character attacks on Zach Polanski, who's currently the UK's only option, because every other politician is corrupt. Like, every single one. I think even the Liberal Democrats, who are supposed to be left-leaning and progressive, aren't actually that caring for the UK population. So, it just doesn't work. It's just utter failure after utter failure. Then they prioritise character attacks on someone who is intelligent and bringing hope to the UK. That really demonstrates the problem here. It's literally a case of the intelligent versus the stupid. It is us versus them. There's just no two ways about it. It's maybe not just intelligent, it's just compassionate as well. Because I think it needs empathy and also love to actually make progress. I think the only world I'd want to fucking live in at this point is like a utopia. Probably would be one where we start like French kissing other fucking country people, other leaders. I mean, I don't know, like something weird, hypothetical. But yeah, like some progressive government's just fucking making out in front of billions of people. It's just, yeah, it's goofy, but you know what, that's better than what we're currently in. Oh, this is a South Park episode that's aged well, kind of. It's pretty relevant though. Season 7, episode 4. And it's about protesting the war in Iraq, which obviously was more relevant in 2002? Wait a minute, 2002? They've only been going 4 years? No, 2003. But yeah, it's quite relevant because there's like two sides of this protest in the episode. The anti-war side and the pro-war side, and basically pro-country. And it sort of explores Eric looking to the founding fathers as the well, premise of the episode is really, as well as this protest. And he finds out that Benjamin Franklin only took a sort of middle stance. I don't know what you call it. It's like both black and white stance. It's like having both. Or as the episode explains, it's like having your cake and eating it. Basically, it concluded that, and it's quite relevant still, that you can have a country that is both for war and fighting in them, and also people who don't agree with it, who are protesting it. Yeah, that's extremely relevant. It's like, this has been happening in the UK recently. It's been happening in the US with all the sort of anti-Trump protests that have happened. And you even had like people protesting the protests as well, which, yeah, it's kind of insane. But do I agree with that exactly? And that is the question. To be honest, I'm not really sure. Because being pro something and then against it is hypocrisy, as the episode mentions. It's kind of funny that it did that. But my stance has usually been that you can show that you're a formidable foe without being a formidable foe. And that essentially translates to you can have all the power and still be a country of peace. And there's no peace when there is someone out there who serves to destroy it, to eliminate peace. That's one of the things I had to concede to years ago when I was originally thinking about these topics around violence and war, even though they were unlikely to happen. I realised very quickly that in a war scenario, not only would you need to be able to fight back, you need to be able to remain peaceful. And it's sort of like what's happening in Ukraine versus Russia to an extent, where they're just minding their own business for God knows how long. Then Russia decided to invade. Now Ukraine has to fight back and push them back, whilst not doing any evil shit, like killing kids, killing families. At least as far as I know they don't. But Russia is like the evil one here. They're obviously on the wrong side, the bad side. Because they provoked the war, they're killing innocent people. That's cruel. That's why this episode sort of ages really well in South Park, because it's still very relevant. It's even relevant with something like Palestine versus Israel, obviously. And yeah, the problem with war is that it costs a lot of resources and costs people's lives. That's the crazy thing, because people only see it as like a number. Because people are stupid enough to think that that's what it's about. But in reality, it's someone's life you're essentially giving orders to control. And meanwhile, there are people out there who have to work, literally, like their entire life. And then we put those lives short because of war. Like, great. It's just not a good scenario. But yeah, so my stance really is that you don't need to fight wars, but you can, again, act like you can. That's the important thing. It's not about deceiving, it's literally about putting money into military efforts and not using it until it's actually absolutely necessary. That's sort of my conclusion with that. So that in an ideal world, if the UK gets a Green Party leader, hopefully it will, it should. If that happens, then the hope is that they'll address problems around the world, like Palestine and Russia. Well, Palestine's not an issue, it's just Israel obviously causing issues for them. And being able to deal with that in a reasonable way is really important. Stopping the funding of Israel, stopping obviously funding Russia, even though we have technically done that. But now we need to get our asses in gear and start going to war with Russia. Because at this point they won't stop. that's why it's so important. We also need to be negotiating to get the US on board, because they're like the only country that can probably do this. But as we've seen earlier today, they're going to war with fucking Venezuela. Like the US just being incredibly stupid, like stereotypically stupid at that level. Just, fuck me. Again, it's like, I question what the world is coming to a lot of times. Yeah, that's replaced my existential dread, because it's like, I can't believe this is fucking real. Does nobody have a brain in their heads? This is a question I'm asking more often now. It genuinely feels like nobody does. Even some of the people who are supposedly democratic, or even agree with me on these points. You do find people who are just incredibly unintelligent and actually don't know anything about these topics they're talking about, let alone can stand on their own opinions. I think I talked about debates earlier in this podcast, and what I said in that issue was, if you can't answer a question correctly, not in the case of like right or wrong, but rather explain your point of view in a way that addresses it, or if you're just jumping over the question, then you're just wrong. Like you need to be able to answer it. That's the point of a question. Question, answer. Simple premise. And if you can't provide an answer, you've immediately lost the argument. And that's the same with something like the US here, something like Russia, and even Israel. They don't provide an answer. And at the moment they're all unjustified in what they're doing to innocent people around the world. So yeah, of course, that's all my stats. Did I explain that military funding is important? Clearly I'm not into geo or economic politics like that, but I do know for certain you do need a fighting force. That's the unfortunate reality of the situation. Like today, you need people to be able to put their lives on the line to save everyone. It's sad, but that is what's happening. Not necessarily save, but protect. Yeah, like crazy. Not sure what else to add, to be honest. Yeah. It's all well and good to have a view that's sort of centre and down the middle, where you're obviously a bit on both sides, like I am as well. Like, let's be honest, that's what it is. So I'm about feigning the ability to fight and being peaceful, whereas on the opposite end we've got fighting and not being, or feigning being peaceful. That's sort of the point of the episode here. And also, I forgot to mention, but South Park mentions Palestine in season 6, I think it was, or season 5. For some reason I like cross-watching a news channel, and it fucking had a report about Palestine on it. Like, oh, okay. I didn't know it was going on for a while, but Jesus Christ. That's crazy relevant. The fact we're talking about that still to this day, 22 years later, 23. That is insane. Anyway, I better move on to this topic because I've got stuff to do. This might be a nice way to change the topic up a bit. What VHS tapes did I grow up with? I'm trying to think to every possible one I had, but I don't think I can remember many because, you know, a lot of the time, obviously we were rewinding it. That's the thing with VHS tapes that sucked. You had to rewind it all the fucking time. And you finished with one bit. God. Yeah. So the VHS tapes I grew up with, let me try to think. So I think the first one I remember quite vividly was probably Tom and Jerry. I think we had a few of them, and I loved watching Tom and Jerry as a kid, but it was also on the television as well, still showing it on like Nickelodeon, I think, or even Cartoon Network. It's probably Cartoon Network now I think about it. I know Nickelodeon was like a very sort of Gen LGBT oriented sort of program channel of it. Yeah, Tom and Jerry was great. And then the other thing we got was Trapdoor. Yep, imagine people who have like nostalgia, probably nostalgia coming in their pants. Like what? No, but that's another show that I sort of grew up with. It's just interesting. I didn't exactly get the idea as a kid, but it was entertaining still. Very catchy theme tune for sure. Yeah, like Trapdoor was pretty good, and it was claymation, which is also a pretty niche thing at the time. I think another thing we grew up with, technically speaking, assuming it did come out on VHS, was probably Wallace and Gromit. That may have been DVD, but I don't remember DVDs being that common when that came out. At least the more later ones. Anyway. And then the final things I think we had, I believe Wacky Races was one of them, and I was only reminded of this today, of all places. And it's interesting because this show was apparently cancelled. I saw a video on it and how it's cancelled and stuff. It only lasted one season, it was like 17 episodes, but it was apparently very memorable, and I do recognise it. That's the crazy thing about it. I didn't even grow up watching it, and I recognise it. Still, I probably did have a VHS of it somewhere, like my parents did. Because obviously my parents had these VHSs themselves. So that's another niche thing. I think some of the final ones that we had, the final VHS tapes, probably something like Simpsons and Futurama, the bits that we had of that. I think that's another interesting thing too. I think Futurama anyway. Again, it came out the era that DVDs were just being introduced, so yeah, it probably was anyway. Yeah, it's quite fascinating really. So I did grow up with VHS for sure, and obviously DVDs, we had plenty of them as well. I didn't have many myself. Speaking of music, I remember getting for my birthday, I think it's birthday or Christmas, Michael Jackson's Bad album. We got an Axel F album, the one with the Crazy Frog on it, I think. It also had that Spanish song, I can't remember what it's called, I keep getting it wrong, by Lando Si Senor. I think that's what it is, Si Senor. That was okay. But the two other albums I got, I forgot there was two, were from a UK band, a very niche one, which had one pop hit, and unfortunately some others that were actually kind of good. Was I think it's the Hoosiers? Hang on, I've got to look it up. Because they made Goodbye Mr. A, and that wasn't one of them, the Hoosiers, that was it. They also had like other ones, I think. Hoosiers albums, let me look it up, because I recognise them. Yeah, I recognise the album cover. Trick to Life, that was also a good one. That's the name of the album too. And I had a second one somewhere. Killer was good. There's quite a few good songs on it, despite how small of a band it is. But as for the DVDs, God, I have some weird stories about this actually. One that's not so pleasant, but interesting. So I grew up with something like some DVDs that my family had, obviously. Simpsons, we also had game DVDs, but that's another thing entirely. I had plenty of games. We had the Simpsons, we had Futurama, Father Ted eventually I got as a Christmas present once. Again, I think it's Christmas, I can't remember what celebration is which at this point. And that was great. Trying to think, probably Father Ted was like the only CD I owned at some point, and then eventually got The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, which, as I said, is where it sort of takes a weird turn. And it's all dark turn as well, obviously, if you know the movie itself. Basically, we were learning about history in school, and one of the movies they showed was The Boy in Striped Pyjamas, which is incredibly fucking depressing. You know, if you thought Grave of the Fireflies by Studio Ghibli was depressing, wait till we see this. Like, fuck me. It makes Studio Ghibli look like a corner of heaven. But fucking hell. It is terrifying. And it very much portrays the horrors of war, the reality of World War II. Just what it did to people, to children for that matter. And it's such a well constructed story as well. The fact this kid was, I can't remember if he was separated by war, or if he was adopted or evacuated. I think he was probably evacuated. No, he was living with his mum, wasn't he? And he decided to run away at some point because she was like abusing him and stuff, putting him in the staircase closet. Yeah, also it gets unpleasant. And then he goes to his grandfather's, I think, and his grandfather is, I think, dying at some point. And he just gets bored one day, runs away, and he finds out that there's like a fucking camp. Well, that's one bit that doesn't make sense though. Yeah, there's like a concentration camp in the UK or something. Maybe I'm misremembering, but anyway, it's one of them. And there's like a kid in there who he interacts with through the fence, and eventually he decides to join the kid. Despite that, and yeah, eventually they get gassed together. And the mother, who was abusive, was mourning him at the end. And yeah, it's a pretty dark movie. To be honest, I don't know why I wanted that for Christmas, but sure. Very strange. Yeah, it's kind of a interesting story. It's just because of history, I think, as well. I was learning that at the time and being kind of fascinated by it too. I was also at the time into like military things. Like in school, my friend was a big military sort of. Well, they both were actually. Sort of big military nuts, and that's why we're playing games like Battlefield and Just Cause for that matter. And yeah, that's where that sort of comes from. And even like Transformers eventually. It's quite interesting. Yeah. Trying to think, I don't remember any other CDs of like shows or movies. I probably had some movies somewhere. I think I had Wally actually. I remember from Wally because one day we were at school and we were asked to like bring in a movie to watch for some reason, and I opted for Wally because I had a girlfriend at the time and I liked the romance with the, I'll say, between Wally and Eve, which is pretty adorable. Albeit a bit dystopian, but yeah, I remember bringing that in and we got to watch that. I don't think people liked me for that though. That's the funny thing. I think a bunch of the kids were like, okay, we've got movies like a SpongeBob movie or something. I can't remember what people bought in. And the teacher chose Wally. Okay, thanks. You made me really uncool with people. I'm pretty sure I had Toy Story. Oh yeah, maybe Toy Story VHS. I don't think about those movies as well. Then there's like people like my granddad on the dad's side who had VHS tapes as well. I can't remember what he had though, but I remember there being a lot of boring stuff. I think there's like some of those old British comedy shows. Is Downton Abbey an old British comedy show? I can't remember, but it's like 80s, 70s sort of stuff. Yeah. I have a fascinating experience with VHS, I suppose. Kind of, I don't really miss it because it's not very convenient, but at the same time it has a niche. It's one that you can really appreciate for laying the groundwork for DVD players, essentially. And I did have a DVD player and TV in my room. In pretty much both places I lived in, because I was in between mum and dad's. Yeah, and I think I started with like a CRT, and then eventually when flat screens were more popular, got a flat screen, obviously more cheaper as well, that's the other thing. Oh yeah, I also had Family Guy on DVD too. I didn't really like Family Guy. It started out funny, but as an adult I look back on it and I think, okay, this is kind of crap. Way too many pop culture references now. Even in some of the older ones, which are better. It's way too much. Anyway, yeah, that's that topic. Certainly interesting one. For anyone who's interested in that, anyway. Let's move on. Why just come up with $1 million idea? Or what? I don't know how I just didn't realise this before, but it's so genius that I think it might work. Like legit, if you risk it, it has a high chance of succeeding. Because I was thinking about projectors and how I wanted to get one for when I woke up and had a nightmare. I had one the other night actually. What the fuck was that about again? It's actually really fucking creepy. I remember I was like thinking like, I'm gonna struggle to get to sleep. I wonder if I wrote it in the journal. God, where's my journal? Let's see. Star of the Dreams. Can't see anything. Nope, I can't find it, which is annoying. I usually write down what the dreams were, or nightmares in this case. Yeah, it was disturbing. And really I wanted this projector a long time ago just to address the fact that I wanted to wake up to, or at least fall asleep to, something that's got an image to it. So when I listen to music, for example, there is a image on that. So I'm usually listening to like jazz or bossa nova, and they have either B-roll or just various bits of footage or images, and they're often great in my opinion. I think they're pretty good, unless they're AI, which is a bit iffy to me at times. Sometimes they're nice, they're animated as well at times, and I probably should be looking for videos older than 5 years old. That might be a safer way to do it, maybe 4 years, because that was before AI really took off. Yeah. But anyway, I think it's really interesting. But this idea that I come up with sort of relates to even a hypothetical that I was considering, where I'd be in a concrete hellscape, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like New York maybe, like, even though I don't want to go there technically speaking, because it's America for starters. I don't know how I'd cope in a living situation like that, being surrounded by concrete and no like greenery or grass. At most it'd be like a blue sky and white clouds are the only beautiful thing, but then you've got the issue of pollution and fog, and that would cover it up, and so I wouldn't really want to have that in my life. But what's one way I could cope with that sort of thing if I were in that hypothetical situation, or even just in that situation where I live now? I think a projector for the walls. Weirdly enough, the idea comes from the fact that projectors have this, I don't know what it's called, it's like perspective thing, I can't remember what it is, but it allows you to adjust the sort of frame so you can adjust it in a way that allows things to be properly projected. So if you're projecting it onto a wall from the floor, you can literally adjust it so that it actually does that rather than project to half the floor and half the wall, which it would do by default. But what if we had a device that goes on the ends of walls or skirting boards, sits there, is about the width of like that gap where if you have furniture against it, it's hidden, and allows you to literally see an image on your wall in place of, well, the white paint, because it has to be white paint, let's be honest. It projects that image for you. And assuming that there's a company that would make images for it, like, I don't know, a moving landscape or even just clouds or hilltop, anything like that that's fucking beautiful, that'd be awesome. And even if you do it for like one projector, it'd be great, really. Honestly, it's a good idea. Admittedly, it's a bit niche because of how you'd have to adjust that. But you could just do it for one or two sides of the room. Like, that's easy enough. And even then, you could just crop it anyway, couldn't you? I'll be able to crop it with the device itself. But yeah, I really like this idea. I was thinking about this before, about having a hypothetical window where my... Cause I actually talked about this a while ago when I was talking about solar punk. But a hypothetical window when you don't have many windows in your house is honestly a good idea. I mean, it shouldn't be real, but obviously you can project like a window. Like, that'd be insanely cool. And it just gives you like that perspective of, okay, my room can actually look really nice. Like, you can even trick people into thinking that you've got like complete like plants everywhere and vines and stuff. Like, there's so many ways to even customize it. Honestly, it baffles me. And not to mention, you could probably develop an app where you can actually adjust the image into a 3D space. So you actually like stretch things out, and the app sort of auto adjusts it for you. Yeah, that'd be great, I think. I could be wrong. Also, there's some things to work out with it, like energy usage. Obviously, you don't want it on all the time. But yeah, that's it. Oh my god, the first real South Park episode that's about a queer topic, that's actually about a queer topic. And not just the Mr. Garrison throwaway, which is interesting. I think this one is really cool, but also it's still quite relevant, believe it or not. Even though I don't necessarily know what queer eye is, or what it's referring to. I know it's like a TV show, obviously. It does feel like it aged incredibly well, given that so many issues in queer communities, as I am pansexual by the way, and I do hang around LGBT plus communities online, it does feel quite relevant. But it's surprising because, given that it's about obviously a queer topic, it's about how people use it as a fad, which weirdly enough, it still sort of is used like a fad in at least online communities, but also just influencer communities as well. Because there are people who watch influencers and immediately think, like, oh, you know what, I think I'm queer, I think I'm gay or trans. Like, there's so many different ways that this is construed, and whilst there's nothing wrong with exploring it, it's when you stick to it knowing deep down that you're not actually what you say you are. And I think it's perfectly portrayed in this episode where everyone was a quote-unquote metrosexual. It made up a term basically for people who are dressing a specific way. Technically it's like metro gender. I don't know why they did call it that. I guess it's like not that far. I mean, not like, I can't remember the fucking term, but you know, it's not that far into queer culture. But they did mention bisexual at one point, which is interesting because I've never heard that term as a kid. The fact that came out in 2003 is insane. Honestly, it surprised me. It did catch me off guard because I wasn't expecting that. And for sure, it's what says culture shock. I don't know what culture shock is actually. Let me look it up. Culture shock meaning. The feeling of disorientation experienced by someone when they are suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar cultural way of life or set of attitudes. Yeah, it's pretty much what a lot of South Park is to me at the moment, even though I know it's satirical and I can essentially shrug it off, like all the R words, N words, whatever. it is a bit culture shocky, and it will be to especially Gen Z viewers or people who are also born after the 2000s. So yeah, it probably will be. But I think this episode has one of the most interesting premises, and I recommend people watch it. It's about how people take on this fad of metrosexuality and dress up in a way that seems queer. So it's almost like, it's just genderqueer. That's pretty much what it is. And they're all doing that, trying to portray themselves as queer. Weirdly enough, it was only the men and the boys that did it. So, yeah, certainly an interesting twist, although I do wish that they had the women doing it to an extent. But I was a bit confused about that, to be honest. I guess the story might not have worked with that. They could have shown some, though. Probably wouldn't have hurt. But yeah, I don't know if I should spoil the story, but obviously be warned as I am spoiling it now. So it just follows them taking on this new trend at the beginning, and Carl's confused because he doesn't know what the hell these guys are doing. Because even Eric's taken on this trend of being a metrosexual, and eventually Carl does it as well, and his parents take issue, and then a bunch of adults come around, the parents sort of take issue with that because it's like they're all doing it. And then the women who are married to these men who came around said that, oh, it's like the best thing ever. It's done wonders for husbands, and so they decide that it's actually okay. Then at school, Cole admits that he doesn't feel like he's metrosexual to Chef, who's there. Chef had like not much involvement in this episode, which is interesting. She's usually quite good at speaking on these topics. Anyway, what's the next thing? He stopped being metrosexual, recorded. Because Chef was also like one of the only men that did it. Also Mr. Garrison and Mr. Slave. So, Colin is obviously now just a normal person. And he gets beaten up because of it by the metrosexual kids. It's just weird to say. Fuck it hell. Yeah, and he goes home, and everyone's kind of shocked by this because that's like a cool thing to happen. It turns out Gerald is metrosexual as well, which is interesting. Gotta admit, it did give a lot of good humour in this as well, and also the backing track for it, just brilliant. It's cinema. What else? What happens after? Oh yeah, Cole comes up with a plan to get back at them, but it's not what you think. And then Mr. Garrison, who actually realises that they're all metrosexuals. Oh yeah, there's a fucking funny moment with Timmy, like, ooh, Timmy. Just, it's so fucking clever. I just love how they write Timmy. And also Jimmy as well. You didn't see Jimmy in this episode much. It's just a background character. You see he turned metrosexual as well. So they all had like a makeover like every single character, which I thought was impressive as well from like a artist perspective, and they nailed it. I'm curious how they did it because that must have taken a lot of work. Like, Jesus Christ, to redesign like a good 40, 50 characters maybe. Well, it's just crazy. Anyway, what happens after that? Mr. Garrison goes to the bar, finds out there's metrosexual people there. He tries to hit on the metrosexual people, thinking they're gay, and turns out they're not gay. And he's confused. He's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? If you're not gay, why are you dressing queer? And this is probably one bit that didn't age well. But I suppose like the greater point of the episode is what's most relevant here. So he's naturally a bit pissed off, talks to Chef about it. So I didn't actually catch the Chef bit for some. Oh, I did, yeah. Because of the flippity floppity fucking thing. You see what I mean if you watch the episode. God, that's funny. But anyway, they Carl decides to go on a train to the network where they're showing Queer Eye, where they've changed everyone, and he's planning to kill them, to kill the queer people on there. And turns out Mr. Garrison and Mr. Slave are too. Just an interesting twist. So there you go, there's also a really funny scene where they're entering fucking, as usual, South Park fashion. It's just absolute absurdity, just goofiness. And they end up not being able to, and then they get caught, sort of, and it turns out that the queer people aren't actually gay. They're actually crab people. Which is another funny twist, obviously an absurd South Park twist. I fucking love that. It's brilliant. Then eventually the women are getting bored of the men being metrosexual, saying it doesn't actually improve like sexual arousal or anything. Which is interesting because I don't think they speak for everyone. Just a point they didn't make, which is weird. Yeah. So that was like the main issue for them. But they go to the network as well and they beat up the queer people, and that's pretty much the episode, and everyone goes back to normal also, but they pick up a new trend at the end. But it's not queer related. But my fucking god, what an episode. It's pretty crazy, but also kind of relevant, and I'll explain that now. The thing that makes it kind of relevant is influencers, and this is essentially the influencer of the TV era, rather than the social media era in this episode. Because now we have social media influencers. Admittedly, I don't watch any, to be honest. I don't even watch RuPaul, for example, who is like a TV show host, I think, question mark. I've never really looked into it, but they host a drag race, and it's essentially all about dressing people in drag, which is cool. But you do see people sort of catch on to it, and whilst it's fine to do drag pretty much with whoever you want, whenever you want, it does become an issue when you're not actually comfortable with it, and you're actually sort of, I guess not deceiving people, it's not the right term, because everyone should be transparent about things like relationships and hookups, like anything like that. It's super obvious, but for some reason, for some people it's not. People definitely need to be more wary of that, and if they suddenly come across as gay, if they're saying things like, I kind of like being a bottom, people are going to think like, oh, so you're gay, are you? If you're bottom or lesbian, like, it depends. And that's going to also mislead people. Also, it's not related to the drag race stuff, but it's besides the point. It's when you pick up on these terms and these trends, even just like the language in general. I noticed this as well, like, diabolical, that's the word that recently gained popularity, I think like a year or two ago, and people have been using it a lot, and it's just gotten really out of hand, because not everything is diabolical. It's like other things like diabolus. No, that's not the right term. I don't know, like unhinged, or I just use it like crazy a lot. Probably should do something else. That's why we have a thesaurus. Don't let the internet and culture and even influencers be your thesaurus. Just pick up a fucking thesaurus. It's not that hard. I could do with getting one, but I do look up words anyway. That can give answers. It could replace words like even crazy like that. I just don't know. Like thesaurus, alternative words for crazy. Similar or opposite words: absurd, preposterous, ridiculous, ludicrous, farcical. Oh yeah, I remember that one. Laughable, risible, idiotic, stupid, foolish, foolhardy. I like that one. This is a pretty foolhardy episode. Unwise, imprudent, ill-conceived, silly. Yeah, as I said, like, the internet's your friend in that sense. So, getting to the point again about influencers. It's like people try to dress up to appear like the people they want to, or are inspired by, like they want to be. And that's one of the sad things. I've even seen this with fucking child stars recently going on OnlyFans, which is creepy. It's like a topic I heard recently. It's like the dangers of this sort of thing. It's like a trend. It's like once one person does it like this, another person will do it. And apparently that already happened in the past. Like a child star going into adulthood, and then suddenly people are instantly, because it's obviously they capitalise on the exploitation of children, and they obviously go into adulthood, they can capitalise on that as well, where they're currently young and obviously very dumb, but vulnerable as well, and people suck up to that essentially. And it's sort of even crazier with the grog stuff as well. Fucking hell. There's so many things going on in 2026 already. It's only the 3rd of January. It's nuts. Yeah, like, it's just nuts. Yeah, AI generating, for some reason, pictures of children, that's weird. I'm not gonna fucking go into it, but, yeah, I will say I like this episode of South Park. It's certainly interesting, and it certainly feels relevant, just because of the nature of it being about influencers and trends. You know, I wish that there was a better sort of moral to the story rather than people having to deal with it themselves. It could have been something like, oh yeah, we realised that trend was dumb. But no, it didn't really happen. That's the only bad part of the episode. It's still a very good episode, I think. Yeah. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the South Park Genderqueer episode. It's technically what it is. A bit surprised if I haven't talked about this before, because I'm pretty sure I have, but maybe people need a reminder. I just finished watching another South Park episode, which has also been very interesting. The crab season 8 is the anime one. I'm really looking forward to that. Fuck's sake. Just sort of spoiled it there. Season 7, episode 12. All about Mormons. Mormons? Wait, say it. Mormons. Yeah, there we go. They say, I remember now. It's an interesting episode because I think it does a really good portrayal of just both the nonsense of religion and the beauty of it. I haven't talked about religion in quite a while, and it's sort of something that even people in my family, I won't say who, but people in my family prescribe to, essentially. Not Mormonism, just to be clear, it's something else, but yeah, basically the episode ended on the note, because also there's a lot of inaccuracies and flaws in the religion itself, apparently, according to this episode anyway, where it just seems like it's all made up, and, well, religion very likely is. But then we shouldn't be telling people that they can't prescribe to a religion, because if it does allow them to live a good life and feel good, you know, who are you to say that it's a bad thing, really? Well, if they debate people to oblivion, literally, to basically explain that we can't know if a God exists, so we can't really claim that there is one without sufficient evidence, and that's unfortunately an inherent truth. Because even then, like, a God would have to back that up anyway. You know, God would have to say, okay, yeah, you know, this is, in some way, there is no proof of their existence. Although that's kind of circular now, think about it. Jesus Christ. Yeah, but I like the message at the end of the episode, which is really good. It's probably one of the best sort of messages or what I learned sort of things from South Park so far, and that is the fact that the Mormon guy, Gary, is a kid rather than a Mormon guy. Mormon guy is actually the father, so also called Gary, which I noticed. But Gary anyway was explaining to Stan that he understands the frustrations, but he loves his life and loves his family and everything, and is quite happy to live it even despite the flaws in religion that he does agree with. Basically, they're not correct, and he chooses to live this life because it makes him happy. That's the moral of the story there. And I think that's really true. Like, this is what I think when I see things like in the UK where people are increasingly anti-Muslim based on scaremongering, and while there is that worry that people unfortunately do prescribe to a more extremist view of it, often based on just other trauma or upbringing, or even just what they've been told specifically. Like, let's not forget that it can come from random people rather than a book or something else. And that's really important to acknowledge. I don't think it's wrong to really point that out at all. And yet people will still argue with me to the ends of the earth to say that you can't defend religion because literally they think it's like one of the worst things in the world. You know, if you wanted to literally find easy to attack religions, like think Jehovah's Witnesses. In my opinion, they've probably got one of the most evil sort of ideas. You know, even if you try to exclude things, like the biggest thing with Jehovah's Witnesses is they literally claim there's doomsday, and I'm pretty sure Christians also did the same thing if I'm not mistaken. So again, it like comes back to that. But this is a point you should criticise, and people shouldn't necessarily follow it. I think there are probably many people who didn't follow that. Didn't follow the fact that there's a quote-unquote doomsday or just a rapture. Like, I remember the rapture thing happening a few months ago. It really shows how gullible people are. But you don't have to prescribe to it. That's the thing. Even if you are Christian, you don't have to accept these things. And it's better to be admonished from that group than to give up a supposedly good life that you've lived. In a hypothetical life, I somehow became, I don't know, Buddhist or Jewish. You know, I wouldn't agree with everything that happened in religion. Everything's written down. But I'll sure as hell pick the things that I enjoy. And I prescribe to it. Admittedly, I try to do it as an atheist, but I'm agnostic atheist. But I'd still stick to a religion even if people just condemn me and try to reject me from their group. Because that's important. You don't have to follow the fucking herd. And that's literally like sheep behaviour, for lack of a correct term. Because that's what that is. That's why people call you gullible and basically call you sheep in the end. There's a crap like that. Because you just believe anything and everything. And you try to justify it instead of reject it. Which I just find insane. Which is why you also have these problems with people thinking that a religion is going to destroy them, destroy their families or country, like anything at this point. Doesn't matter what it is. If you could think of two things together, it's like people will think a religion will destroy that. Whether it's Islam or maybe even Jews, like you never fucking know at this point. That's like stupidly important to acknowledge. So yeah, I did think it ended on a pretty good message though. And it didn't portray Mormons in a terrible sense. Like, even as an adult guy, as a kid I might have found it a bit stupid looking at this family thinking in South Park here, like, yeah, they're not very fun, playing board games and role playing, like, nah. But as an adult, you know, that doesn't seem like a bad life to me. I wouldn't mind having technology breaks or moving towards board games as a way of entertainment. And I think that's the other thing with this, is if you like the things that your religion does, but don't want to prescribe to it, or simply can't be convinced. But you don't have to. That's kind of the thing with this as well. Nobody's literally saying to you that you have to do that. It's all a matter of perspective and trying to do the best with your life that you can without obviously harming people. Yeah, so if you can like pick out the things that you like what I saw here. I was already thinking like technology break, like sounds like a good idea, but then I realised I already do it. That's the weird thing. You know, whenever I'm taking a bath, that's the technology break. Whenever I'm doing my thing in the afternoon, if people don't know what that is, I'm taking a technology break. And that's sort of like my meditation as well. And even when I'm not really going to the toilet, but when I'm going for walks, exercising, I might be taking a technology break as well. And it's good to do that. That's why it's so important. They call it a TV break. Or, I don't know what it is actually. I can't remember what they said in the episode. Just remember they stopped watching TV for some reason. Yeah, it's a good episode. I did like it. I didn't write a good episode. Like that. It's just a good episode, and also just like the goofiness of the song. Like using dum 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 as a melody. And yeah, that being inserted into parts where it's just, the religion makes no sense. It's pretty genius. And then they do one later where the wife is like objecting to this whole Book of Mormon thing, and so they say that Lucy Martin, smart. You have to watch it to see it, believe it really, and I'm really highlighting these episodes because they're just so interesting. It's not exactly like the most amazing work I've seen in terms of writing, but it's still really good. I do like these spins on it, the satirical nature of it as well, but also when it's like this, it has a meaning. You know, compared to the previous episode that was about Eric Cartman and going to fucking Casa Bonita and doing this really fucking sick and twisted shit with buses. It's like, oh God, I don't like these episodes. I like the one where he murdered a family, not family, but parents of this kid that was bullying him. I liked it because it had some twists and turns. It was kind of dark, but also entertaining as well. Like Eric getting his just desserts. I'm sorry I spoiled that, but it literally was a okay episode for that reason. And yeah, that previous one, Casa Bonita, is just it's horrible to go through that. I think an episode I'd say skip all. There's nothing to it really. Didn't find anything funny, didn't find it interesting. Just really proves more of the cruelty of Eric, obviously. Anyway, just wanted to talk about this again, another religious topic. But also, like, it's about equality as well. Like, going back to the UK thing, I forgot about this. I think it's important to have equality even in religion. I think when people are joining hands, like agnostic atheists and Christians and whoever, like Muslims, like, there's so many different types of people here, so many different types of religions. But I think if you're not exactly joining hands with them, you've just lost an argument, you've lost a debate. And if you're like the person that's willing, obviously you're in the right, but the people who aren't willing is what I'm talking about, who are being the problem. That's where we see these issues. You know, you can be Christian and have Muslim friends. That's not a sin. That's not a bad thing at all. Converting them, yeah, that might be a bad thing too. I think as long as you just obviously keep those things to yourselves and discuss them or debate them, like I say, in ways that can destroy your party, just stay friends for what you know each other as, a personality, how you met maybe, like, there's many different ways this could happen. That's why it's important that you join hands in the end, because you're sort of in it together. And when one religion is excluded, many more could be. And that even includes ones that are like less popular, again, like Mormons or Jews or anyone. Not just like it could include subdivisions actually when I think about it. There's always that danger. Inequality leads to more inequality. That's why I often don't understand these arguments from people. Why I don't understand a lot of America at the moment, where they claim to be Christian, and then they're committing like the most fucking heinous sins possible that not even their religion agrees with. Like just voting Trump as a fucking starter. Just one that doesn't make sense to me in the slightest. So yeah, it just gets incredibly frustrating. It is kind of a betrayal, like this inequality. Literally, the very nature of that has already divided people. Like, how many fucking immigrants who just people of colour, because let's be honest, they don't care who they imprison. But how many of them have been abducted and suddenly, they're Christian, they believe in God, they go to church every Sunday, or maybe they're not that stereotypical, maybe they do something else, but again, that separates people. That's why shit like that is so evil. You don't even consider the fact that immigrants could be very well supporting the religions you support. They could even be fighting your fights, and you don't even know that. People are complex beings and not simple. Like, not simple-minded people. That's the crazy thing about humanity. I did learn a new word recently, I could have used that, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that. Obviously, in the UK, people need to shut up about mosques being built. Like, who fucking cares? It's like with the name as well, like the most common name being Muhammad, apparently. Like, apparently that's not even real. I think that was like based on a school survey or something. Like just a single school. Like, hello? Like, what? I've met many people where I live. I've met many people in the place I used to live as well. Not many people actually, just the places you do meet them, doctors, maybe even like restaurants, depends. Their names. I've not met a single Muhammad ever, and that shows. That shows that the issue is just completely blown out of proportion. It's completely misinformed. That's why you shouldn't always believe what you see online either. So when we're talking about demolishing mosques, what you should be asking yourselves is how reliable is the information you've got? Simple as that. And that's the perfect way to end this, I think, in this topic. Truth be told, I'm doing a sort of search in terms of finding, obviously, truth. I've been doing that for quite a while now, probably about 7, 8 years maybe. Yeah, about 8 years, actually, that's accurate, yeah. Christ, it's been 10 years since fucking mental health breakdown, but anyway. I've been thinking about my questions to politicians who want to change the way things are done, and obviously just focus on character attacks and dodging questions. Because I've already explained how dodging or not answering a question is in itself an admission of being wrong. And one of the questions that I've come up with that's really hard for them to answer, typically if they're far right and just not that intelligent in general, is if we remove democracy, how do you expect to clean up after disasters or mistakes, like whatever it is? Like, think about obviously like the Thatcher thing that happened many years ago in the UK. Like, yeah, that was a disaster for homeowners based on what I heard of it anyway. It's like a bunch of privatisation. And, if it weren't for being able to vote just bitch out. It's like, there wouldn't have been hope in hell for anyone in the UK. Like, nobody. You know, I think the fact that we're still here, and for the most part at least, able to live a life, I think that goes to show that democracy has had its way. Even if it's not the most favourable thing that's happened. I think the problem is people just don't have any trust in politicians, and when I'm thinking about how to keep in politics, like basically staying as a leader, staying to serve the people, you have to do that by literally serving the people, basically giving them what they want and what they need. And that's really important for keeping people's trust. You know, and one of the things that I've noticed as well is that when it comes to like game companies, weirdly enough, because this sort of is related in a sense, it's weird, but it is. There's a sort of similar sort of thing here. Maybe a correlation is more accurate rather than a relation. But when smaller game companies, or one of those lesser known game companies, like let's use Larian Studios, when they get stupidly rich or greedy, they tend to fall down a path where they're just condemned by people, they're just disliked, and then they just start believing weird shit. Like, Larian already believes that AI is a way forward for game development. And ironically enough, apparently the NHS is planning on using AI, which perfectly demonstrates the issue. Can you see the similarities there? You know, the richer and more popular they become, the worse they get. That's why my solution, in terms of if I was running a country, is to never be rich to begin with. I'll take the payments, but I would give them away. Essentially, I still want to live the same life that I've lived for a while. I'd borrow a few essentials and maybe a couple of treats, but that's it. I don't want to fall down this trap of getting everything premium. I don't need an RTX 5090. I'll just go over 5060. I don't need a 4K monitor at 100 and whatever hertz at this point. I just need a monitor that does its job. Like 1440p is just fine for me at the moment. And that's really it though. You don't need anything else. When you look at the amount of money you have, you shouldn't be thinking like, oh, how am I going to spend this on myself? You should be thinking about, how am I going to spend it bettering my life, and how am I going to spend it supporting others? That's the most important part of this. When I say bettering your life, it's not in the sense of greed. Greed is a different thing. Bettering your life, though, could involve getting better products, for example. You know, if I want to get a new phone that actually runs, that's bettering my life. Merely I want a fair phone, but not willing to risk the money for that at the moment. But I'd pay extra for UK made stuff. That's certainly something I would consider. I'm trying to think what else there is. I certainly want to learn instruments, so that's like another way to better my life. It's another hobby, another thing I can learn over time. You get new art software, but you know, that's it. I don't need all this other shit. I don't need necessarily driving lessons. I don't drive. But I don't need a car. If I were to have driving lessons, I don't need a fucking fancy car. I just look for some of the old ones, like maybe just a Prius is just good for me. And I kind of like the Priuses actually. I've been in, I think, 2 now. And they're decent. You know, the hybrids as well, pretty cool. Certainly have its use. Yeah, again, it's just about not going all out. And lots of times when I think about when politicians take a bribe from either billionaires or Russia, something either like that, or even just Israel, it often means there's corruption, and when someone's corruptible, that is a danger to democracy. It's as simple as that. And frankly, we should have an establishment where there are anti-corruption laws, and this is like one of the only things I think should be forced. Because the problem with corruption is it means anyone can just be bought out, which is why we're in the situation we're in to begin with. So to prevent it, and based on obviously population votes, it should be based on that, not what politicians say, but what the people say. People should have figured out by now, especially in the US, corruption is the underlying cause of all these problems. That's why Trump is going to war with Venezuela, that's why Trump is so in bed with Russia, that's why Israel is still attacking Palestine. That's why so many problems exist. That's obviously a thing that needs to be addressed. It should become international law, in my opinion. I think there should be a cause for concern and literally, just worldwide intervention when something like this occurs. Because it's too fucking dangerous to leave it alone. I don't trust Labour at the moment in the UK. Labour's just fucking us over constantly. Just mercilessly. And we're not left with many options. We're just struggling constantly. Because they're fucking us over. They're putting in new rules, new laws, trying to change policies, and trying to kill us. Like, if they're not killing us, then what are they doing? They obviously haven't had the education, they haven't looked into these issues properly. It's just like a passing thought. It's like, oh, not today, I'm gonna ban VPNs. Like, what's the fucking point? That's how stupid these things are. When it's an uninformed decision, it creates uninformed consequences as well. It just works that way. Anyway, I think I better move on, but it's a hard question to answer, isn't it? Especially if you're corruptible. So, Genshin 5.8, I just finished watching the videos. Conquest. I didn't write down who played it. What was it about? Oh, an F, that was it. It's probably Dora. Yeah, so I remember that. Yeah, so anyway, interested to start with the skull, knowing Paimon and Traveller. What the fuck? Sorry, I got distracted, but back. So the fact he plays the mage is brilliant. It's interesting. Hey, what mage am I talking about? Is it an F? I can't remember. Oh yeah, it was an F. Of course the people are from Norcroy, yep, I'll write these notes down. Interesting how I'm noticed the robot, pretty fly for an Outland Dragon guy. How? In effort being the 11th Dragon Sovereign is crazy. In effort being resistant in that cave is unsurprising, the core being there and all. The voice crack of the girl in the cutscene, adorable. Your name's Never. And the password being 12345 is hilarious. And Varkor's mention I voiced. So yeah, some interesting parts to that. I don't remember it very well because it was like a week ago now or so I watched that. But it's okay. Like, I wouldn't say it was an Archon quest, to be honest. It seemed more like a story quest, given everything that took place in that. Sure, it involved everyone else, but like, who fucking cares? Honestly, it should have just been a story quest. Just didn't provide much in terms of lore at all. Like, we already knew the Dragon Sovereigns existed and probably were still alive. That was the point. Again, it's just pointless, but as if that wasn't bad enough. We still got the summer quest to go through. The story quest for this patch, which was supposedly removed, I think, because it was obviously part of the summer patch. I wrote down my notes, A. Bennett. Also, is this area permanent? I noticed that it's attached to that land. I don't know if that's permanent, because obviously I'm watching this. I saw some random Genshin tuber play it. Might have been WoW Quest, actually. I'll think about it. Yeah, Melomania and Chuska, do like the inclusion, more of those image type parts, so yeah, the introduction. A bit better than the janky animation. Some areas in this place look alright, not the best though. I'm selling sons. You're selling sons, said Paimon. But, gotta admit, this prayer shit is just shit. Yeah. That's so awkward, traveler turning into a saurian, being fed by and pet by Melomania, and Paimon's crappy excuse about the stomach problems. Obviously, Melomania doesn't know the truth. Or does she? I like the left side speech bubbles down. There's a nice quality of life I noticed. It's in a better place and easier to read than the old poem text. Honestly, I noticed at this point it felt like a story written for kids, in all honesty. As if the Fontaine one wasn't bad enough. This one just feels particularly like it was designed for kids, even though the others definitely had its like fantasy and almost like childlike elements. I think this one was like just through and through just built for fucking children. Like it's just intolerable, insufferable. It's so bad, like none of the dialogue really hits anywhere. Get that maybe it's like a slice of life, but they could have done better. There's like nothing funny going on. The fact I only had one good joke in that, which was the songs, it was terrible. A legendary gunslinger hero, I wonder who that could be related to be. I jokingly said it's got to be Bennett, and they didn't really expand on it, but I think it was actually Bennett's father, which is interesting. I just sort of joked that because Chaska was there. I was like, yeah, I wonder who that could be. But I suppose it makes sense given Chaska didn't have any sort of reaction to that. She's like, oh, I wonder who that could be. And didn't say like, oh no, that's probably my father. Like, nothing like that. So that was definitely an interesting little drop. It's probably the only clever part of the story, to be honest. And the fact I joked it could be Bennett's is like, oh, okay. Then we meet Venti again, tone deaf bard, and then everyone just goes to hell for some reason. Hopefully I remember this last bit. I'll try and remember it. But did everyone just go to hell? Yep. But this is where Bennett meets the evil thing. I don't know what it is. It's just in the sky. It's talking to him, and then he's passed out, losing life, and everyone has to try and find him. And then they find him, and he's got a cutscene with his parents and stuff, and him as a baby, which is okay. But I gotta say, this story is nothing. Literally just nothing. We already know this shit happened to Nathan's people. I'm pretty sure we had another story like this, where other Nathan parents were just killed, like, by the Abyss. So I don't really get why we're doing this again. It's one of the most fucking uncreative story elements. So obviously, Bennett is a baby in this cutscene, and he's surrounded by 4 people. There's his parents and 2 of their friends. And then in the next scene they're fighting off the Abyss and dying. And then they died, leaving Bennett behind. So, also got fucking distracted. They left Bennett behind and became ghosts, and then they prayed and became ashes. The little blobby things that we were interacting with throughout this event. I say we were, but the Genshin tuber was. I don't know what's called. Genshin tuber is probably the more accurate one. Yeah, so they got put into them. And that's why they were so close to Bennett. So Bennett was seemingly saved by something, but it wasn't shown. And yeah, I had to write down the thing. They're ignoring the evil thing. Like, they wake up Bennett, they leave the place, and the evil thing's just no longer being acknowledged. Like, whatever it was that just tried to kill Bennett. What the fuck? Why? Like, you've got some of the most talented writers here, and they fucked up this basic detail. Like, who the hell is even this sort of bad guy who was talking to Bennett? unless I've missed something, but I don't get what's going on. Then again, I did skip over a bit, I think, because YouTube on my phone for some fucking reason keeps making me go back in time about like 30 or 40 minutes. So I've been listening to podcasts and it's like, oh, you were back here last time you stopped, when I obviously wasn't, because I remember the fucking conversation for the next 30 minutes. And then I skipped over some of it to where I thought I was. I pretty much got to the part where Bennett was like talking to the thing. And yeah, it seems like there's a detail there that's missing. So I don't know. But it's just kind of shitty anyway. Also, the fact that can happen to begin with is like, yeah. It's not good when you can skip over details like that, even if you just look away for a second. And then a final note on this. The fact Bennett was an A away from Natlan is why it's bad luck. I found that interesting, so it explains a lot. But Bennett is actually born in Natlan. To be honest, I'm not surprised. It doesn't surprise me a bit. Yeah. So, based on the looks of that patch, it looks like garbage. It's probably one of the worst patches I've seen in Genshin history. And that's saying something, because Inazuma had some of the worst patches in the game. Sumeru definitely had some. But it's surprisingly bad. So yeah, I'm not that satisfied with the story element at that point, but at least it's not the Hour Conquest, which itself wasn't great. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on Genshin Impact 5.8. Right, I'm making an outro. It's been going on for a while, so thanks for listening. See you on another time.